Grayson, it's the first day of the NFL draft, and we're probably not going to hear any Wolfpackers names called off on today. But we are going to talk about the fact that over these next couple of days, we can for sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west, count on at least one of these guys getting drafted. I'm seeing as many as 3, 4. Are you ready to get into these prospects and how even the guys who couldn't be drafted could pull a bam night and all of a sudden set a bunch of rookie records after not being taken in this NFL draft?
We're going to have a couple more Pack Pros to celebrate because that is what Dave Doran does.
Absolutely. Dave Doran does it. D'Antonio Thunder Burnett does it. Let me tell you something. This team just does it when it comes to getting players in the league. We're going to talk all that and more. Future Pack Pros on the go and not just breaking sirens this time on today's episode of Locked On Wolfpack.
You are Locked On NC State, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
First thing first, listeners, please be aware that we are about to start up our first ever Wolfpack Wednesday, where we're going to be fielding your questions and we're going to be answering them on air, answering all the questions that you have about Wolfpack sports, whatever the case may be. We're going to be getting into it. And now, with that being said, let's talk about the players in this NFL draft. Now, the player that has shot up everybody's board, I mean a meteoric rise up everybody's boards, is Chandler Zavala. Big Chan is a guy that these NFL scouts are drooling over. I mean, they're salivating at the thought of getting a big old guard with some wonderful feet and amazing grip strength. Can you bring up the stats about his protection for us real quick?
I sure can.
615 pass block snaps, 0 sacks allowed, 1 QB snap allowed. I'll tell you what, Big Chan is a big baller, baby. This man does it in the trenches. He's an absolute war daddy when it comes to trench warfare. Now, please, Grayson, give me your take on Chandler Zavala and where you think he'll go.
Yeah, so for our listeners, not just our watchers on YouTube, I have a screenshot of a tweet here from Pro Football College. It says, through 615 pass block snaps, Chandler Zavala allowed 0 sacks. That's impressive. And just 1 QB hit. And that's very well documented why he was an All-ACC first-team selection. He was why this football team fought so hard to earn that extra year of eligibility for him to be a part of the program last year. He was an anchor to the offensive line next to Grant Gibson, and he was a very, very kind of under-recognized piece to our team offensively last year. I think a lot of people lose sight of how important a role these offensive linemen play. It's kind of like a thankless position more often than not. And I think if we didn't have Chandler Zavala last year, the season would have gone a lot differently than how it did play out. But yeah, Chandler has skyrocketed his draft stock, especially after his pro day just a couple weeks ago. I heard a lot of buzz coming out of the indoor facility over there after Chandler Zavala put on a show for all the scouts. He ran a pretty good 40 time. It was just a tick over 5 seconds flat. For a fella his size, that is picking him up and putting him down. And then he also benched 30 reps, which shows the strength he's going to have on the interior of an offensive line. But I think he's going to find himself a payday here, probably as high as the second or third rounds. That's kind of where I've seen him projected in most of the mock drafts that I've seen thus far. But yeah, he's certainly going to find a home fairly early in the NFL draft, and it's going to be well-deserved. The amount of work he put in with this football program, the year of eligibility that we did fight so hard to get, it's going to pay off for him quite literally, because the tape that he got in the honors that he got, the first team All-ACC, very well deserved. And it's It's exactly what we wanted him to come back for. It's exactly what he fought to come back for. And it helped him. It did exactly what it's supposed to. And so he is going to be drafted likely on day 2 or day 3.
You know, I I saw. By the way, for those of you who don't know, I'm a technician alum. The technician, the newspaper at NC State. I'm a technician alum, and I saw that they had Chandler Zavala's fit being the Detroit Lions. Love y'all. Love y'all. We're friends, folks at the technician. You have a supporter in me, okay? Forever and always. I'm sending you heart emojis, heart emojis. I'm throwing heart emojis at you. But now, Chandler Zavala is a absolute stud, and I can see, I get it. I get it. I get why teams like him as much as they do. And again, like you said, it was a rise that kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like when you started this process and you started talking about the players that could be drafted, for the most part, Chandler wasn't the front runner of this group. And then out of nowhere, it just seems like a Chandler Zavala love fest started. And hey, Brad Holmes again. You know what to do here. You know what to do. But anyway, he's a guard with good, really, really good pass blocking ability. And in today's NFL, that's a combination that you need. A guy who can anchor down in the run and also stop those defensive ends when they come inside on those different pass rush packages and whatnot on 3rd and 15, 3rd and long, or whatever the case may be. When teams send in their speed packages where it's going to be a defensive end rushing on the inside, that's where you need a guy like Chandler Zavala who can kind of match that, mirror that, and show the type of strength that matters to win those one-on-one reps against 3 techniques and in true pass rush or not in true pass rush situations, but you have a defensive tackle lined up over you. That's what you need there. That's what you need. And so, I'm real excited about Chandler and what the NFL holds for him in the future. But man, we've got some other players that we've got to get to as well. And after Chandler, there seems to be quite some drop off and not much of a consensus in terms of who's the next one up. There are some folks that have Corey Durden being the next one up. Some folks that have Derek Pitts being the next one up, which is very surprising for me. Some folks who have Drake Thomas as the next one up. Some folks who have Isaiah Moore as the next one up. So we'll go over all of them as well here. I think that with each and every one of them, you run into some very unique situations. Like for Corey Durden, nobody in the NFL runs a 3-3-5. And the 3-3-5 is the most difficult in terms of evaluation, I would say, on defensive tackles. Because what are you doing that is something that you would be doing on a regular basis in the NFL? Like, what is it that you're doing play in and play out that you can easily look at and say, okay, I can draw out of this that this is what this will look like? Because your base defense, even in your base defense, there is either going to be some motion and movement required, or you're going to be playing it as a true 2-gap situation, even if you're not a zero technique type of defensive tackle. So I think that may present some interesting things here. But Corey Durden was a production machine while at State. I mean, doing a great job of being disruptive, getting in the backfield and beating double and at times triple teams in order to create disruption. So I could see why teams are looking at him and taking a good hard look as well.
I think another guy to keep an eye on would be a Grant Gibson. This is another one where we've built a good reputation with our offensive line play here at NC State, and we put out a lot of great names in Garrett Bradbury, sorry.
Yep.
Will Richardson that went to the Jaguars a couple of years back. We have some very interesting amount of talent that comes to NC State and plays in our offensive line. And Grant Gibson is no different than any of these. He's been an anchor of the offensive line for the last 4 to 5 years. It was really hard to see him get injured at the end of this year because of how important he's been to our offensive unit. But I think he's a guy that will find himself on a team. I'm not sure if he'll hear his name called, but I think it definitely will be a situation that he'll be signed at the very least with somebody, because a guy at his talent, a guy at his stature is going to find work. He absolutely will. Somebody will absolutely take a chance on Grant Gibson.
And I think the interesting thing here is some people will be concerned, right? Some people will be concerned that we don't have a first or high second rounder in the draft and said, oh man, what are we doing? We're not getting the players, yada, 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 so on and so forth. If you understand NFL rosters at a high level, finding the gems in those middle rounds are where these teams are built. That's where the GMs earn their reputation. That's where they earn their bread and butter. And so, or that's where they earn their, GM of the year awards and all that. And so I just want to make it very clear that, hey, we may not have those top end guys, but you have to remember, number one, that's not where most teams are built through. And number two, we have to remember there still hasn't been a filtering out from the COVID years yet. We're still seeing draft pools that are exponentially larger than we've ever seen before because of the COVID situation, which naturally pushes players back down the rungs in that order. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at this situation. And again, rosters are built through those middle rounds. And speaking of built, I've got to talk to you all about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar, all the calories, all the extras that are going to make you feel bad, then you need to get the best tasting protein bar ever. Yes, ever. It's Built and you got to try it. If you're like me and you want a healthier snack, something that's not only good to you, but also good for you. You know what good to you means. You know when you eat that candy bar that's your favorite and you just get those good feelings. Imagine getting that without the guilt of feeling like, oh man, what am I doing here? You can get that with Built Bar. I mean, check out these macros, okay? Some bars contain as little as 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar while packing in a whopping 17 grams of protein. I'm not sure how Built does it, but they're figuring it out anyway. It's covered in each bar is covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Again, it's good to you. It's good for you. What could go wrong? And I know some people are saying, well, what could go wrong is I got to wait. I got to go to built.com. I got to put in an order and I got to wait. Well, guess what? Not anymore. Not so fast, my friend. You can head on over to Walmart or Sam's Club. Walmart has the 4-bar boxes. Sam's Club has the 13-bar boxes. So go and pick one up online or in stores today. So Grayson, in terms of guys who are not going to get drafted, who you are like, hey, this player probably won't get drafted, but they have a chance to do something similar to what Bam Knight did last year, where, I thought that his pass catching ability and his ability as a returner was going to get him drafted. I was wrong, but he signed with the Jets. And the second that Breece Hall tore his ACL, he paired up with Michael Carter, unfortunately, a guy who, used to wear baby blue. And they turned out to be an excellent backfield that really kept that offense afloat despite Zach Wilson's best efforts. So with that being said, who are you looking at this year? Who are a couple guys that you're looking at and saying, hey, this guy might not get drafted, but watch out for him. This is a name that you could be hearing a lot on Sundays next year.
I think 3 guys come to mind. I think it's interesting because all 3 of them are safeties. Tyler Baker-Williams, Tanner Ingle, and Cyrus Fagan. I think these are 3 guys that have a skill set that was so unique to the defense that played so well into what Tony Gibson tried to do. Obviously, you mentioned that kind of defense is not in the NFL, and so there's going to be an adjustment period for these guys if they want to make it to the league. But I think the talent they showed off, the tape that they have, and the ball hawking ability that all 3 of them have that we've seen these past couple seasons, I think all 3 of them are going to find work at some point. I don't think that they're going to hear their name called, but I think at the very least 2 of the 3 of these are going to get signed undrafted free agents wise, just like Bam Knight. Bam was a situation where we all thought he'd be getting drafted. He went undrafted, but immediately made a name for himself when he had the opportunity to do so with the Jets. The talent that these 3 possess, very much able to do the very same thing. So we're going to see where they end up. But I do think the 3 of them will find work in the NFL one way or another.
I'm going to go with a very easy answer, and most people are going to think this is a layup, but I don't care. I don't know what Thayer Thomas has said to NFL GMs and all of these draft gurus to make them absolutely hate him. But I have a few observations. If you go on almost any of these draft guru websites, you'll see that they're like, first of all, they're very off on his 40 time. Everybody has him listed at 4.55 or slower. Yeah, 4.55 or slower. Running 4.5. He ran a 4.48 in real life, right?
4.48. That's correct.
4.48. Now, for those of you who are thinking, well, 4.48 and 4.55, those are pretty close. No, they're not. That's a pretty big difference.
In draft talk, that's a world of difference.
Especially for a receiver. Like, if we're talking like a defensive lineman, sure. Offensive lineman, sure. It's not the same. They're never going to run 40 yards in a play. You don't really care. Of all the positions in sports, who's likely to run 40 yards in a play? Receivers probably top 2 to 3 in that category. And he showed that he can do so at a high level. But not only that, I'm looking at him and I'm saying, other than the fact that at times he struggled with press a little bit, at times, I don't see why you wouldn't see him as like, and I will say this, he's not a great tackle breaker. Okay, sure. Struggles with press a little bit, not a great tackle breaker. He always finds his way open, and he does not have drops. He's good at high pointing the ball, plays bigger than he is. I don't get it. I legitimately don't understand it.
He's about as sure-handed as you would want at the wide receiver position. Absolutely.
As sure-handed as you want. And not only that, he was this team's safety net and their best receiver by a mile last year. And honestly, on the list of crimes that Tim Beck must pay for, this is probably top 2 to 3 on a list of sins that when the good Lord calls him home and he reads that scroll of all the things that he did in his life, one of them will be, and you refuse to get Thayer Thomas the ball, even though the boy was more open than a 7-Eleven in 2008. Why? I don't understand. For those of you who don't get the reference, most 7-Elevens are 24-hour establishments. The reality is the man was open all the time. And even when it was a contested catch, you could count on him more often than not to come down with it. I don't get it. I don't
One hand, two hand, in traffic, wide open. He always seemed to make the play.
He always seemed to make the play. Not to mention, a lot like Bam, he can return the football.
You can.
I don't get it.
I think it's kind of funny talking about Thayer because you try to picture Thayer in the NFL, and you, at least I do, I immediately picture him in one of 3 uniforms: Patriots, Steelers, or Colts. He seems like he fits that perfect slot receiver that you've seen so many different times on one of those 3 teams. Not necessarily saying that he will end up on one of those 3 teams, but the skill set that he has is something that has to be on some level intriguing to a lot of teams looking to probably make a spark with guys on their practice squad or whatever, however that shakes out. But the difference maker that Thayer has been these last 4 to 5 years with NC State, I don't think that will go unnoticed. And while, yes, he does lack in perhaps the size department and, breaking tackles, he is quick for his position. He was a difference maker on a prominent team the last couple of years in college football world. His pro day was, it's pretty well. He did pretty well, but I'd find it hard to believe that he doesn't also get a shot with somebody at some point.
And here's the thing that's so interesting about this to me, that's like really blowing my mind. And I hate to do this because people are going to say, oh, that's not really a fair comparison. And you're putting him up against a guy that's built very differently than him and yada, 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 so on and so forth. If you look at him against, let's say, and you talked about it, so I got to do it. Jacoby Myers just left the Patriots. I believe he signed with the Raiders. You look at the most memorable receivers for the Patriots in the last, decade and a half or so. You come up with generally 3 names: Randy Moss, Wes Welker, and Julian Edelman. I'm sorry to tell you, I don't know what world you look at and say, oh, well, he doesn't quite have the ability of those two guys. And I know what you're thinking. Well, those two had the advantage of having a Tom Brady. Sure. But even when they were away from Tom Brady, except for Julian Edelman, he didn't do good things away from Tom Brady. But Wes Welker did. Wes Welker found a way to do good things even apart from Tom. So, there's that. But also, with the new spacing in the NFL, the new movement in the NFL, and how important it is to have a sure-handed slot, I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's not like we're looking at a guy who doesn't have wheels, because he does. It's not like we're looking at a guy who has bad concentration drops. He doesn't. It's not like we're looking at a guy who, how tall is he? What, 5'9", 5'10"?
I think he's listed at like 5'10", yeah.
Okay, he's listed at 5'10". We're not looking at a guy who plays his size or smaller than he is. Again, the first play against UConn last year was what, Grayson? It was a jump ball down the sideline to Thayer Thomas.
Yeah, for like 68 yards.
Over a double team, by the way. It was cover 2, and that ball was not thrown in like oh, this is the perfect drop pass right here. No, Thayer just went up and made the quarterback right. And that to me, and I hate to go on a tangent about this, but that to me is the best thing about that. He just makes quarterbacks right all the time, even when they're wrong. The last time I remember him not making a quarterback right was probably the ECU game when he was running the curl and Devin Leary threw up a duck that ended up getting picked, which is like, I mean, that's on Devin Leary, but still, he did not make the quarterback right in that situation. Every other time, he's there. He's open. I have beat on the table. I have screamed from the heavens, hey, we need to get Thayer the ball more. And for whatever reason, we did not, which is, I mean, it is what it is. But the reality, again, the head coach of the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, you're going to have to answer for those crimes, brother. You're going to have to answer for them. But I think that there's a guy that's going to go on to have a very long NFL career. And another guy that I don't think will be drafted but could have some potential, I think if Derek Pitts converts to a safety, I think that there's a chance for him to have.
He could find some work.
I think he could do it. I think he could do it. I don't think he's a corner. I think as a corner, that's a little, hips a little too tight. The moment of truth sometimes is a little bit too big for him if you need him to constantly do that. But if you got him in a little bit of a slower situation where things are still coming at you fast, but not quite the same way, he's a really good tackler for a corner, which tells me you could convert him to a safety and feel like, if he's the guy standing between that back and the end zone, I can trust him to make that tackle or at least slow the guy down. I think that he has a career ahead of him as well in terms of guys who won't get drafted. And I didn't mention Drake Thomas because I believe he will get drafted. I refuse to believe that NFL GMs are not smart enough to be like, this guy showed that he can do a little bit of everything at a very high level, but we don't want him. I refuse to believe that.
Yeah, I was just about to loop back in and say I'm not sure we can speak about the NFL draft prospects from NC State and not mention Drake Thomas and Isaiah Moore.
Yeah.
Two-thirds of the best linebacking core we've had in a long time / probably ever at NC State. And, that's going to be extremely hard to replace for one, but the talent that those two possess, they will absolutely be in the league on Sundays.
And I'll tell you what, if this was 2000, I think Isaiah Moore would be like a second, third round pick because he's built in that classic. He's built in that classic linebacker mold from that time where a Mike linebacker, your job really was about B gap to B gap. Like that was like, if you can hold all this down, we'll love you forever. And now it's a little bit different with some of the things that they're going to ask you to do in coverage and carrying guys up the seam and checking backs one-on-one and all that. A little bit of a hairy situation there for Isaiah Moore. But, yeah, I still think that he's a guy that it's possible for him too. It's possible for him to have a good NFL career as well.
And you mentioned, a lot of teams, their draft is made in the middle rounds. I think that's exactly where you're going to find both Drake Thomas and Isaiah Moore. I think
Yeah.
They're two guys where their NFL story will be written is because they were drafted in the the NFL drafted in the middle round, and they are a bit of the diamond in the rough type. I think that's how they're going to shake out.
Right.
You're not going to expect them, but when they do, they get a couple of years of experience under their belt. They're going to earn that starting role, and they're going to run from there. That's the kind of talent that the two of them each have.
And in the NFL, you need something that you can't coach in order to have success, right? With Thayer Thomas, is the ability to make the quarterback right. With Drake Thomas, it is his tenacity and relentlessness and his playmaking ability. He always just finds a way to make a play. Whenever you need to play defensively, be it an interception, be it a sack, be it a TFL, he finds a way. With Isaiah, that is one of the most cerebral human beings you will ever hear talk about the game. When you hear him speak about the game, concepts, blocking schemes and all that, different types of blitzes and how his run fits should work into things. This man, there is no other word to use than cerebral because his football IQ is off the charts. You know that's going to be somebody's at minimum, at absolute worst. You know he's going to be somebody's defensive coordinator one day and a damn good one while at it because he understands it. He understands ball.
He is a leader. He is a field general, and he is a dog. He's going to find work on Sundays.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we're wishing all these young men the best. Every Wolfpack player that has their name entered into the draft, we hope all of y'all hear it. But even for the ones who don't, look at your boy from last year. Look at Bam. If y'all don't believe nothing else that we say, look at Bam. It don't matter. This is right now, the NFL draft is seeing something that we've never seen before. Draft pools bigger than they ever been. There will be players who are not drafted because of that expansive draft pool. And it's unfortunate. It sucks. We won't see this thing shake out and be fully back to normal until 2-3 years from now, probably. But it is what it is. You don't do anything but control what you can control. You may not be able to control where you go, or you may. But what I do know is you can control 100% what you do with every rep you're given. What you do from the moment you're given that playbook. What you do from the moment you step in that facility, you can control that, fellas. So, we wish y'all the best. We wish all these players the best. Wolfpack Nation is behind each and every one of y'all 100% of the way. And hey, we saw this last year or a few years ago, rather, with James Smith-Williams and Murchison and all them, where, they were back of the draft guys or undrafted, and now look at them playing it impactful snaps and doing good things for defensive lines that are objectively some of the best in the league. So we'll see what can get done here for these players. We're going to land this thing after a quick word from our sponsors. I want to bring this graphic up. Because when you talk about this team and when you talk about Doran, I think one of the things that you have to talk about, Doran is going to have every record in NC State football history. He's going to have all of them in terms of coaching. God willing, if everything goes right and he stays healthy and all that, and he's going to have all of them. With that being said, again, Doran has done the thing in terms of player development. Thunder has done the thing in terms of player development, and they have turned players who nobody saw coming into absolute studs. That third part developed more recruits with 3 or less stars into NFL draft picks than anyone in the ACC, third most in the country in the past 7 drafts. Folks, I don't know what else to tell you. You can say what you want about, he hadn't won an ACC championship, he hadn't done this, he hadn't done that. He's going to walk away with all the records. And when it comes to developing the players that nobody sees coming, he does it at a higher clip than darn near anybody else in the country. You got to give him his props. Grayson, any thoughts about this?
Yeah, and a couple of these other bullet points for our listeners here. It says he has 27 draft picks in the last 10 years. He has more players drafted from the state of North Carolina than any other ACC school since 2018. So in that way, he's outperforming Wake Forest. He's outperforming the boys in Baby Blue. He's outperforming Duke. He's getting players into the system, developing them, and getting them to the next level. That is an integral part of being a successful college football coach, in addition to wins and, program success. But this goes a long way in the recruiting aspect. You can go in the living room. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but that second bullet point, than any other school in the ACC. So that includes Clemson, who's taken a good amount of talent about the state of North Carolina. More players drafted from the state of NC than any other ACC school. That includes Virginia Tech, who comes down here and grabs up a good amount of our players too. Again, I'm just saying. I'm not saying, but I'm saying.
Something we pride ourselves on is the homegrown talent. It's something Dave Dorn puts out on Twitter a lot. It's the homegrown talent.
Build a fence around the state, baby. Build a fence around the state. Keep them in. But go ahead. Proceed, Grayson.
I lost my train of thought. It's all good.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you. I just wanted to let that be known that, yes, he's beating the in-state teams. He's also beating the out-of-state teams if they're in the ACC in terms of getting players who are from North Carolina drafted. I'm just saying the numbers are the numbers. Facts do not care about your feelings. Players, if you from the state of North Carolina and you're thinking about, well, where should I probably go? There's only one place that can be number one, and only one school is the top in terms of players who were born here, raised here, getting them to the NFL. That's Dave Dorn. That's this NC State Wolfpack. Grayson, any closing?
Success. Exactly.
Proven success. We're not talking about, well, if things are shaking out right, what Dave could do, or well, if this team didn't, we're talking about what has objectively happened. Grayson, any last thoughts on the draft before we get on out of here?
I'm excited for our new Pack Pros, whether it's 1, whether it's 2, whether it's 4, whether it's 6. I'm excited for each and every one of them. Just more to add to the list of how great a NFL talent producing school NC State has become under Coach Dorn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to get on out of here, but Wolfpack Nation, thank y'all so very much for supporting us. Thank y'all for supporting these players. Thank y'all for keeping this show rolling. Y'all make this show what it is every single time you show up. Peace and love, y'all. And as always, go Pack.
Go Pack.
You are Locked On NC State, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.